Welcome to the Shootin the Que Podcast, the podcast that's harder than your competition cooker and your first wife. We'll be talking barbecue and more with one of the top pitmasters in the game. Get ready for juicy tips, saucy tricks, and sizzling stories that'll leave you hungry for more. Let's start shooting the Que. Here's your host, Heath Riles.
How's it going, everybody? Today we're joined with our good friend, Andrew Arbogast, who, for all of you that does not know Andrew is the proud developer and owner of Arbos Cheese Dip. How are you doing today, Andrew?
And Heath, I'm really excited. And first of all, thanks for having me on. It's so strange, not that there's, cheese dip podcasts out there, but the way that I've kind of made myself or the brand or, the cheese dip itself gotten into the barbecue scene, it's so much fun. And I think it's like my favorite category of food. Love eating it. Can't cook it, but I can provide the cheese dip. So thanks for having me.
Hey, man, anytime. And so for the guests that don't know you, why don't you tell us what you do and who you are?
Certainly. So as you said, Arbogast. So that's the name of the dip, Arbos Cheese Dip. And I started this 2 years ago. I would say December 31st, 2020. A little over 2 years ago, and it was when I was working at my corporate job, and pandemic happened. I've always had a passion for food and wanted to go to culinary school for, decades. When I was in the Army getting ready to get out, I brought it up to the wife, and she kind of laughed at me. So I'm like, all right, well, corporate it is, but this is something that my dad has always made for decades, and it's a comfort food for me. It reminds me of home because I didn't live in my hometown Memphis for 20 years, whether it was high school, college, and active duty. But whenever I came home, like he knew he was going to have a fresh batch right there waiting for me when I got home, and I'd always bring it back to where I was going and learn to make it myself. And it's just something that spurred one day, and I dumb, ignorant me was like, well, this can't be that hard. And it's incredibly hard. And it gets harder, but if you love what you do and you're passionate about it, it doesn't matter.
That's right. And so you piqued my interest here. You said you were in the service. First of all, thank you for your service to our country.
Oh, man, thank you. I appreciate it.
Let's tell the viewers what you actually did in the service, because I don't know the full gasp myself.
Sure, yeah. So I purified water. No, that's one of those interesting MOSs that we do have. But I actually flew helicopters. I was an Apache helicopter pilot. It's the one gunship that the Army inventory has, where it's got 30 millimeter chain gun. They call it a 30 millimeter cannon, which it pretty much is, and then Hellfire missiles and a range of different types of rockets. So it's there to protect our troops, and it was such a rewarding job. And again, going back to my naivety with everything, I was like, this can't be that hard. It's a pretty sexy job, and gosh, man, you're up in the air and you're flying, you got your front seater and you got a wingman and you got guys on the ground that are in trouble, and you're just trying to make sure you don't crash the helicopter, know where the friendlies are, know where the enemy is, and take care of business. But so, again, that kind of played into the cheese dip as well, because it was thinking, if I can deploy to the Middle East and, come back and go through all of this, how hard could cheese dip be? And sometimes I'm like, I wish I was back in Afghanistan.
This, I think distribution world in general, it's not just cheese dip, even on our side of the business.
Yeah.
It's really demanding, and I think COVID has kicked off a kind of a burst in your grocery stores and your places for local providers like ourselves. And sometimes those local brands, start catching on and going national.
Mm-hmm.
We've been looking up to get some stuff out there, and I know it's just a matter of time before you do too.
That's one thing I humbly stated, maybe not to the masses, but when I started this, I had this vision of this product being on grocery store shelves across America. And I think that's what gave me the confidence is, some people may say you got to, I'll believe it when I see it. Well, I saw it and we're not there yet, but I cannot think of anything other than, just me dying that's going to keep me from moving the needle and making it a nationally distributed product. But you talk about, believing in it, but man, the steps to get there, there's so many lessons and failures that you have to go through, and they suck. I mean, I know when I'm in them and I'm like, this will end, this too shall pass. But when you're going through it, it is so hard. But when you come out of it, man, you're 10 times better. So,
man, they always told me my dad did a bought lesson's the best lesson. And it seems like if I buy it once, I don't buy it again.
That's it.
And I think I've told you that before, just us meeting and talking, and I try to pass on to my friends and fellow colleagues. There's no sense in you paying for that knowledge if I don't already paid for it.
Man, so. And that is so important. I could probably draw out a list of 10 things that you've told me that have helped me avoid struggles and obstacles. And I love that this community, especially the barbecue community, when I see, when I participate in a competition, really just I'm there to have fun and provide some product, get the name out there. But I see how the synergy with everyone is so friendly and supportive of each other. And, I don't have that with cheese dip. It's cutthroat, we're not, I'd love to be friends with all the cheese dip manufacturers, but it doesn't work that way. So I'm just super impressed by, not only the camaraderie that y'all have, but the help that you've given me. And, MW Smokers, they introduced us. And, I mean, it's just been a very fun venture for me, and y'all have helped tremendously.
Well, tell me, what made you choose to pursue making Arbos in the first place once you got out of the service? You said you had a corporate job. So what really pushed you over the edge to just pursue that dream? What really was the teeter point for you?
Boredom and loneliness. I mean, I thrive on relationships and that bond with people. And when I'm stuck at my house on a laptop and I get to thinking, each promotion in the corporate space, more money led to more and more unhappiness. And I felt desperate for something else. And, there's these personality tests out there that you can take, Myers-Briggs or whatever, that, will tell you, hey, you should be a dentist or you should be this or that. But, man, food is my passion. And I'm like, well, I've got to figure out a way, because I understand I've got young kids, me just starting this brand new thing, trying to, maybe start a restaurant. It didn't seem viable at the time, but I'm like, well, I woke up one day and it was just like Dad's Cheese Dip, right? My dad's name's Charlie. And so I started toying around with the idea of like, okay, asking my friends that not only, were some that were entrepreneurs, some that weren't, and everyone was just very supportive. Like, dude, if anyone can do this, like, we believe in you. And so that's what I need. I needed someone to tell me this was possible. But, having the conversations with family, friends, you have to not only convince them, but convince yourself that it's not a pipe dream. Are you willing to put in the work, the effort, the extra hours? Because I was still working at my corporate job. And when I would finish working at 5, I'd go to my buddy's kitchen downtown and I'd cook till midnight, 1 o'clock. Come back home with, maybe 4 gallons of cheese dip because I spilled the rest of it all over the floor or I burnt it. And so I was just sweating through all of it. And I would wake up the next day, not really care about my job. All I could think about was making cheese dip. Now I'm like, I don't want to make another bucket of cheese dip if I don't have to, just because, I got someone else making it for me. But the passion's still there. And I think it's just the bond that, it still allows me to connect with people and hey, I've got cheese dip. So it's like I'm typically invited most places, not because of my personality or character. It's I've got product.
Well, I mean, cheese dip, it goes right along the lines with if you show up with a cold beer somewhere or a bottle of whiskey. And so you can never go wrong with that. It's like bringing flowers to your woman. You brought cheese dip today. And you just can't, it goes hand in hand, right?
It does. And as soon as I showed up, I was like, I forgot the beer, man. I brought chips, but I'm still missing something.
Well, we always have a cold drink around the office here, whether it's a cold beer or are a few bottles that we keep in the cupboard over here.
Oh,
We
yeah.
always keep a little something in case, somebody stops by.
That's
Always.
that's the good way. My office is at my house, and so I typically have some bourbon on hand, but no one really comes over to work, so it usually turns into fun pretty quick.
I mean, I used to do the same way. I started out working in that recliner at home, you know, with a laptop in my lap. I hated sitting at the desk in the office, and I would just turn off the TV and work from in that, and I've built it up to having a shop and an office and different things, and so I know it's in the works for you.
Yeah.
There's not a doubt. What would you say is a common myth about your industry and cheese dip? Because I can honestly say I don't know that much about the cheese dip world.
So going back to, my ignorance or lack of experience in this space, I knew personally, and then just from seeing, you go to parties, any gathering you go to, there's always some sort of a dip, and usually it involves cheese. And my thought was, well, I don't have to come up with a formula that isn't proven. This has been made for years. But while I was going through this process, I would have anybody that came over to my house, UPS guy, FedEx guy, cleaning ladies, whatever, I would make them do a blind taste test with my product and 2 other local competitors. And every single time mine was chosen. So I had some fear of, hey, this is the home of ponchos at the time. Not anymore. I was worried that I was going to get a lot of pushback, right? And so, but when I did it, people were like, "This is similar but different." And I don't want to say that they said it was better, but it was like, okay, there's room for more. That was my thing. I was like, hey, you can't have enough cheese dips out there.
There's always room for a competitor, and we tell ourselves that as barbecue guys. One day they're going to buy somebody else's rub. One day they're going to buy mine. The next day they're going to buy somebody else's. And, usually if you've got a good product, they're going to circle back to you. So at the end of the day, you let your product speak for itself.
That's it. And you don't have to scream it. You let the customer scream it. And I like the harmony of all the dips that are out there. But, one of the common myths is, well, and I don't know if this is just dip specific or cheese specific, but where my product is sold is in the deli, right? It's considered, it's perishable, so it's refrigerated. It's not the Tostitos in a chip aisle. So you have to move the product quicker, or you have to, you're going to, once this is the craziest thing at groceries, when I found out getting into this, like, hey, if you're, selling in Walmart and your product expires before they're able to sell it, they charge you back for it. They won't pay you for what they didn't sell. And I that was the hardest thing for me to understand. And even till today, it gets to the point where being in the deli, being in that higher quality area, the margins are higher, right? And so originally I was like, I gotta be able to beat the competitors' prices, but then that evolved to where, I think about Yeti as a perfect example of, I buy Yeti stuff. Is there another brand out there that's 50% less and does the same thing? Yeti may say no, but I'm like, it keeps a drink cold or warm or whatever. But I love Yeti because you're attracted to that brand and that lifestyle, whatever it is. So I'm like,
you said it, lifestyle. It's all about the lifestyle.
Yes. And so I went from, instead of trying to be the lowest cost, which I had no chance in hell being able to do based on my volume, I was like, you know what? I'm going to keep it the way it is because, for one, I've got to make money. And, it's not, once you get into the bigs, getting into distribution, everything else, you're facing chargebacks, deductions, and all this other stuff. And what you thought was a 30% margin or 25% margin ends up being an 8% margin. So you kind of like break even in some cases, but the more you grow, the idea is that
about volume,
right? Yeah. So that's why I'm in such I say it's a sprint to expand as quickly as I can, but I think someone taught me a pretty good lesson within the last month, and they said, you're trying to grow, in Texas, and you're talking to a retailer in California or in, the Northeast. Why would you want to spread yourself out a mile long but just an inch deep? He's like, focus on what you have right now, because getting on the shelves is not the hard part.
Getting off the shelf's the hard part.
That's it. So, and I was like, no way. It's so hard to get on the shelves. What do you mean that's not just going to sell and they're going to keep me? Well, how do you think I got into Kroger? They had to replace something else, right? And so that's what I live in fear of, is just, things it's on me to control, but it's hard to manage, both psychologically and, how do you make sure your product is selling and you're not going to be the next one that's discontinued?
It's real easy for, I think, people you work around to call you crazy when you have all these ideas and all this going on, and in the back of your mind, you just nailed it there. There's always competitors coming behind you, and so you always have to either, A, stay on the cutting edge, your marketing has to be sharp, your branding has to be sharp. It's all about that lifestyle, so you constantly have to stay on top. And you're just like me. You're small family-owned business. You don't have hedge fund investors or anything like that. And I see so many brands these days now that are taking a quick buyout or a quick partner, at a big firm, and then before you know it, they own a very small percentage and they don't have any say-so in their brand or distribution. And like you said, the chargebacks and the this and the that, and a lot of times dealing with co-packers, and you're just an email pusher, and you're placing the order because you brokered the deal, and it leaves, and then it's gets mixed up at a dock somewhere, and a sheet of paper comes off the bungee, the wrap around the pallet.
That's it.
And they charge you $500 because it's missing a label on the side of a pallet. I think
it's insane.
A lot of our fans out here and listeners probably don't understand that or even know that side of the business. It's something very unique that we have to deal with, and like you said, the psychological factor at the end of the day is incredible sometimes.
If you let it, it'll beat you down, and it happens to me, and I still go through it. Resiliency is something I have to fall back on. Talk about time and service and what I went through for 10 years in the Army. That's what I'm like, all right, if I got through those experiences, this is a walk in the park. It's easier said than done, though, because it's just so easy to go down that dark hole, and you're like, all right, then something good happens and you're back. It's just, what they say, peaks and valleys, right?
Peaks and valleys. That's right. Yeah. Look here, looking at your 3 cheese dips, what is your favorite one to make?
Man, the white.
I got to agree with you. White's absolutely my favorite.
It is. And it started with the yellow, because that was Dad's.
It's the OG dip.
The OG, and to this day, it's we've got a house divided. Half the kids love the original, the other want the white, and I'm happy with that. But they're so different. And
tell us about them.
So this one right here, this is Dad's, right? So this is the original, and you probably can't see on the camera, but there's a lot of, you can see the boldness, almost like you can taste it just from looking at the specs of seasoning, pepper and tomatoes and stuff that's all blended in. So we take a American cheddar blend and combine it with tomatoes and chilies, but we blend it so that there's not chunks in it, and it's got this viscosity or this consistency that you can dip it cold, and that's how we've always eaten it. So all these great things about it are none. I can't claim anything, it's all my dad's stuff, but it just worked out. And that's one of our claims to fame, is that it's always dippable. You won't leave a broken chip behind, and you eat it cold. Or if you want it warmed up, man, put it on tacos or macaroni and cheese base. One that someone tried recently, which I love this because they're not my ideas, but I'm like, good, I appreciate that. They made like Mexican street style corn and poured Arbos on it. I'm like, I was almost drooling thinking about that, right?
Well, that sounds good. I wish I could eat corn nowadays, but I can't.
And then we made a spicier version of the original where we kicked it up with some cayenne, and it gave it a smokier flavor. And some people are like, hey, man, that's better than the original. I'm like, oh, gosh, I don't know how I feel about that. But and then the white, creamy jalapeno flavors, got some onion, garlic, and white pepper in it. It still has that bold kick, but it's super mild to where kids can eat it and everything. Original, kids love the original. They love them all, but they're just two totally different types, the white and the yellow.
Well, what's been your biggest fail so far by making dip? And so have you ever had any just crazy things happen to you while trying to get started or making it at home or anything like that? I've heard a couple stories. You know, just instances that got mentioned to me about things happening to you.
Yeah. So this was, you think about like the weight or the scale of the failure today compared to when you started. You know, I think it was like the first or second month. I just made this huge batch down at my buddy's kitchen, and I'm bringing it to a walk-in cooler, but I'm driving it in my car, and I had it in this, 80-quart pot, and all I had was a lid on to secure it. And, common sense says, well, at least, tie it down with, rubber band or something. And you have no idea. I'm just like, I have no time left to do anything. And then I'd already spilled cheese dip all over the floor that night and wasted a lot, burnt a batch. And I remembered saying to myself that night, I was like, if I hit a speed bump and this dip spills, it's over. I'm done. It's like you come so close to those moments where you're like, this is going to be it. But I think, fast forward to today, one of the biggest failures I had was food service. I tried to market the product a little too early.
That ain't what I'm talking about.
Which one? You remind me, which one?
I was told by somebody to ask you, did you ever flood your house?
Oh, Jesus. Thanks, Win. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Let's hear this story. I got to know it now. Yeah. Here we go.
So, I'm going through this, all right, I'm trying to get into Kroger. I've got one great product. I'm pitching to them, and the feedback I'm getting is, hey, unless you got 3, you really aren't going to be able to move forward with anything. I'm like, all right, well, I got to come up with 2 other flavors. Easy, I'll make the original spicier, but I got to come out with a white, a queso blanco, because that's what everybody keeps asking for. So I'm spending 6 months at my house, experimenting. I've got cheese manufacturers that are shipping me samples, Schreiber and Welcome Dairy and everyone else, and I'm like, I get so lost in which ones I even used for which batch and how much water. I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. But one day, my wife was coming home early, and our agreement is like, have that kitchen cleaned up by the time I get home, right? It's respectable. She wants to walk into a clean house, and I had, just freaking cheese everywhere. It was like on the ceiling. I use this immersion blender and everything, and it's scattered everywhere. And you're multitasking, right? You're doing 50 things at once. Well, I start the water in the laundry room. We've got a sink in there to get it hot, but I forgot to unplug it. And so I'm in the kitchen and cleaning pots or doing something else. And my wife comes home and she's like, Andrew, and it scared me, man. I'm a jumpy person. If I hear somebody yell, and I look down, and there's about 2 to 3 inches of water, like standing water, that have crept from the laundry room all the way down the hallway and then flooded the dining room area. And I didn't even know what to do. I was like in shock, right? Like, what do you do in that moment? Because a towel isn't going to wipe it up, right? Well, the worst part of this is after I did get it cleaned up, I've got a pitcher and I'm scooping water into it, and eventually used all the towels. I did it again a week later, and it was worse, right? So it's like, you talk about, hey, you may learn from your mistakes, man. And that's the life of an entrepreneur.
So did you mess up in the wood, hardwood?
There's some buckling. There's, thankfully we have these like concrete finished floors. That's what saved us, I guess, but if we had a wooden floor, we probably would have moved by now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, Damon, is that not an incredible story, man? Not once, but twice. He did not tell me you'd done it twice.
I appreciate Brian for reminding you of that. Thank you.
Man. I don't know how we're going to top that anymore. Well, what was your favorite childhood food with your dad making the dip? I've got to ask that.
Okay, so the easiest thing to go to is just the tortilla chip and eating it cold because it's instant, right? That's why a lot of snack foods today are selling so well. They don't require, things that don't require preparation. And so that's always been the absolute favorite. But mixing it, boiling some noodles and getting the original yellow, we would use that mix it with macaroni, and you would add some mozzarella to it. So mozzarella doesn't have a ton of flavor, but it's got that texture that you love, and then you've got the boldness of the cheese dip. So it was like mac and cheese, and sometimes we would dip. This is, I wouldn't, put this in like this wouldn't be a commercial, but my dad always cooked sirloin steak, and there's always leftovers. Well, sirloin steak,
that's all we ate. That's all we ate.
Right.
Sirloins. There was no such thing as a ribeye or a filet until I got older. I did not know they existed.
That's exactly the same.
We were poor. We had to eat sirloin. That's what this grocery store.
Sirloin. Yep. We were living good at that, and then it was canned corn and maybe a baked potato or, something like that. But to this day, I'll eat canned corn with, I'll church it up. I'll do a ribeye, but, and a baked potato, and it just like brings back these memories. But so the next day after the leftover steak, we would cut these slices of it, kind of like bite-sized slices, and it's cold, and you dip it in the cheese dip cold. I still do that today if I have left, even if it's filet, I do it.
Really?
So yeah, man, that's just one of my favorites.
What would you say the proudest moment of your career is so far? I know you just got started. You're a couple of years in, but what would you say is the most proud that you've achieved so far?
I would say easily getting a deal with Kroger, and not just because it's in my hometown. That's the major grocery store here. That's a big component, but they're a national retail. Kroger is the biggest grocery national chain in the U.S., I'm pretty sure, and if not, they own a lot, right?
Outside of Walmart.
Outside of Walmart.
Well, they were the largest, I believe, until whatever year Walmart decided to start the super
You're
center.
right.
And overnight,
Yeah.
Walmart quickly became the largest grocery retailer.
And you know what's funny? I don't even think about Walmart because I think of it more as a department store.
I do too.
Volume-wise,
I'm with you.
Yeah. And I'm also so scared of Walmart too. So I'm like they don't.
They're not that bad.
Oh, yeah. Don't tell them I said that. But I think getting in there within me knocking on the door, 6 months in business, and then 9 months later, not only did they say, all right, we're going to give you a chance with 40 stores, they called back the next day and said, we're going to give you 100 stores in 5 states. It's on you for this to be successful. And there's a lot that is implied there. But
there's a lot that's rides on those programs like that.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, we just had another meeting with them the other day, and they're kind of wanting us to expand as well. And I think we're in about 63 what our DSD delivery guy knows to, and we're fixing to go to another 150 maybe or something like that, 120.
Certainly.
On that range, and then gradually out from there.
Yeah. So it's one of those where it's a unknown territory for me, and getting into Kroger legitimizes my business to where I can go find other retailers too. So if I'm approaching Publix or someone like that for the first time, I'm happy to say, or I'm proud to say, hey, we're in 2 different Kroger divisions and so on.
Well, going back to the food aspect, what is I know you've got fans out there, and y'all got a Facebook page and all that kind of stuff. What's the most unique dish you've seen created out of your cheese dip?
Oh man, that's a really good question. And the reason why it's so hard for something to come to mind is because so many things have been done with it that I've never done before, but are so easy. So whether it's using it in a casserole or pouring it on a baked potato, which is one of my new favorites, or just using it as a dipping for whether it be quesadillas or stuff like that. So I would say the most unique thing, and it's not crazy, but I saw someone cook up some Chipotle. I think it was some Chipotle breakfast sausage, and once they drained the juices, or I say grease, whatever it is, then they poured the Arbos in it, and then it went over these. I don't know what you call them. It's almost like those at Taco Bell, those those gorditas, that type of shell. It's almost like a pita. They like toasted those and put it on it. And I'm like, man, that's been my favorite thing to see. I haven't tried it yet, but
that sounds good.
Yeah, the corn thing was pretty cool too. That one was a surprise. But
you've kind of got my head turning about doing some mac and cheese research with it, about adding a flavor, and I think I'm going to have to try that coming up. I'm gonna have to mix something up.
And I was at a food show on Tuesday in Batesville, Mississippi with Performance Food Group. I went out there not only to shop around but get some ideas. And right now, this Cajun theme isn't leaving my head. So I'm like, okay, do I come out with a voodoo Cajun? I think of like Zapp's chips, those crawfish flavored chips.
Boy, they've really hit the market nowadays. They've got a Zapp seasoning out now.
They do. And
there is what else is out? We seen Zapp's pretzels the other day.
Oh,
the very first time, Zapp's pretzels.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, so something like thinking about that and crawfish, but I think casseroles tend to be like one of the things that come to mind. Pretty easy. I did use your chicken rub the other day, and the same as the steaks. Once it's cold the next day, I'm like just using that to dip it in chips. So
our chicken rub has that southwestern type to it.
Is it okay to use it on other things?
Oh yes, oh yes. Believe it or not, I've got a recipe coming out or not I cooked the other day where I used the chicken rub and my hot rub and made a buffalo rib.
Ooh,
used it on a rib, and it turned out very, very good.
Oh yeah. It's so funny too, because like I think it's the sweetness of the sauce, but my 1-year-old will eat cheese dip and he'll eat chicken nuggets, but it has to have Heath Riles barbecue sauce. And I'm not lying. You look in our cabinet, there's
the sweet sauce.
The sweet sauce, and then we have an original. He eats both, but they like it because it doesn't have this spice, not spice, but like some of them have a kick that I don't think agrees with them yet. But your sweet and your original has been in the fridge and also just kind of used on a multitude of things.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Appreciate it. All right, so describe your daily routine right now.
All right, so I got back from Nashville last night about 1 a.m. After going down for a meeting, and got to sleep in about 7:30 today. So, man, it's taking kids to school every day in the morning, and my wife usually picks them up, or we flip-flop. That is one of the most exciting things about my day, is walking them to school or taking them to school. But then right after that, I'm like running home, and I've got this tunnel vision of like what I'm about to start, and it could be screaming at distributors about disputing chargebacks, because when I get on something, like I'm fierce. And
that sounds just like me, don't it, Damon?
Right. Yeah, and you're like, well, is this worth my time to try to get $300 back? And I'm like, it's principle, man. Like,
it's the principle of things. Sometimes
they will bully you around. And so it's either that, or I'm tidying up a pitch deck to send over, shipping samples to different retailers. Shipped some to Sprouts yesterday, and then later I'm working on my books, just accounting stuff, and then just doing some R&D. Yesterday I did some experimenting with some different flavors, and helps give me some ideas. And I love scheduling networking meetings. Like I've come up here a couple times and chat with you, so I always try to leave some time in there to focus on the bigger picture and making connections and stuff like that. I think I don't give myself much of a break, and that's where I think I'm not worn down, but I'm like I know I'm tired, right?
I mean, I get that way sometimes myself, and I just kind of kick it in second gear. Sometimes I'll go down a gear and then I'll go up 2 gears.
Yes.
To kind of make up for my going down a gear. I hate to say it. And
I know. You feel guilty. And
you do. I just have the responsibility of so many people on my shoulders now that I think about things a lot differently, and the decisions that I make and the lives I'm going to impact and do, having employees and stuff. And,
man,
you'd have told me 10 years ago where I'd be where I was at today, having some employees work for me in this barbecue business, I'd have laughed.
Right.
I never thought it would be that way, but it can get to anything you want to make out of it. And we try to put out a quality product just like you do. And I think people
y'all make it look
pick
easy,
up to
man.
it.
I'm like, y'all have these beautiful sauces and seasonings, and I'm just, other than my original, it's so hard to come up with seasoning blends. And
man, I got a whirlwind going on in my mind. What, anything new you're working on right now?
Oh yeah, I've got.
You want to tell the listeners first off?
Oh yeah. So we've got 2-3 big things coming up. So first thing I'm really going to be super proud of is our rebrand. As I'm wearing a hat, I'm all decked out right now. So it's more patriotic. It's more of my identity. This one, I love it. It'll always have a special place in my heart. But what I learned is it's hard to read it, especially when you're at the grocery store. It's so hard to see. And people that haven't tried it, they're in Texas at Central Market.
Need that cheese dip on it, right?
Yeah, it's got to say cheese dip, but it says it in cursive in size 2 font. So I learned all that. So we've got this rebrand coming out. It's going to be, still the same 3 flavors, but we're giving it a nice overhaul. And then we are launching e-commerce, which
That's what I'm talking about.
I know. That's one of the most exciting things because I never thought this was in my future, at least for the indefinite future, because I couldn't imagine me cold packing and shipping products myself and charging customers the $35 it costs to overnight it. But our distributor, Gourmet Foods International, thankfully, coincidentally, we're in the Atlanta warehouse. They have an arm where they will basically not just receive orders, but they'll do all the labor, shipping, and everything. And so I don't have to do anything. I'm shipping the product to Atlanta already for Kroger and for Central Market in Texas. And all they have to do now is just pull some from the inventory and ship out 1, 2, 3 tubs, whatever people are ordering. And we're going to get ready to launch that. I will be ready by the end of this month, but I'm trying to time it with the rebrand. It may not work that way. I'll probably just announce it in early May, maybe going into what's holiday in May? Is that it's not Labor Day, it's Memorial Day. I should know that. So that's what's coming up next in May, and then I'm definitely 1 new flavor, possibly 2 limited time releases just to see how they go. One of them is going to be, I know this sounds crazy, but we've experimented with the original recipe and adding blue cheese.
I was just thinking that in my head, I promise you.
Dude, it is insane.
And adding any buffalo sauce.
That's the second one. So I'm like, do I do buffalo or do I do like a cage? I don't know. That's the thing is you just keep experimenting and trial it with people and all this stuff and figure it out. But that blue, I'm thinking about it like, what do I call it? Beale Street Blue or Memphis Blues. I don't know, something like that. Probably giving people ideas. So can I trademark that? But,
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's that flavor, even if you aren't like a huge blue cheese fan, it's a hint of it. It's not like super powerful where you're eating a true blue cheese type dip or blue cheese by itself, but it's got the little blue cheese chunks in there. Man, I'm really excited about that one. But, I from talking to you and getting some pointers on, hey, shelf stable stuff versus perishable, I really want to spend this year experimenting, possibly releasing something else, whether it's like a cheese powdered Arbos seasoned product for popcorn or whatever it may be, or even kind of like a cheese spread. I know you recommended that, and I've already taken a lot of steps to getting to that phase. So it's so crazy because I'm like, I'll never change the original recipe. I'll never sell anything but this. But then you learn, you're like, oh my gosh, I need a shelf-stable product.
You almost have to give people what they're asking for in a sense. And
Yes.
that was kind of like us. We started out with our everyday rub, you know, and I say that because I see the garlic jalapeno bottle behind you there hanging on the wall.
Oh, yeah.
And so we started off with one flavor of it, you know, of everyday rub. And that was just salt, pepper, and garlic, right?
That's right.
And a few spices. Well, that turned into me wanting a spicier, kind of a little bit of a kick, not too spicy.
Yeah.
Because the garlic jalapeno is not really spicy. It just has a little bit of heat to it. And so when I created that rub kind of took off and kind of passed my everyday rub of salt, pepper, garlic. And I sell so much as a garlic jalapeno now, now I don't use the everyday rub a lot myself. I use the garlic jalapeno.
Right. It's by the way, I've got to try that one because I saw it when I walked in, and I have the garlic butter and I have your all-purpose. Went from that Smoking Brothers indoor competition, I came back with so many rubs and sauces. But I've just loved getting to live through you all with, the barbecue world and everything that y'all are doing to help me. So it's like, where do I go from here, man? That's the thing. There's no limitations. It's just, what are you willing to do?
No limit. Well, I just want to tell you, thank you for coming on the show. And for everybody that does not know who Andrew is, I hope you find this podcast, listen to it, and order you some Arbos Cheese Dip, because when you try it, I guarantee you'll be converted just like me. There's without a doubt.
So much joy in just being able to sell, $5-6 tub of cheese dip. So I wish I could just give it away, but you can't run a business like that. So.
You know how that is. Well, tell everybody where they can find you at online.
So we just recently launched online fulfillment across the U.S. So nationally, you can now order Arbos Cheese Dip by going to arbosdip.com, ARBOS dip.com. And it will route you to Gourmet Dash, but that's our landing page where you can order from. But if you're somewhere local where it's sold, we're in Kroger in 5 states, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas. Did I say Kentucky? I don't know if I covered all 5 there, but and then we're also featured all over Texas and every major city through Central Market. Right now, we're just trying to focus regionally and, grow out. But the online fulfillment was a huge win, especially since this is something that has got to be cold packed. And if you order $75 or more, it's free shipping. So we'll see where it gets next.
That's what I'd like to see. Well, thank you for coming on with us today, Andrew. And as always,
cheers.
Enjoy
man.
Shooting the Que, everybody.
Awesome.
We'll see you next week, another episode.
Thank you for tuning in to the Shootin the Que Podcast. If you have any comments or suggestions for future episodes, please feel free to reach out to us on our social media channels or through our website. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. Leave us a review if you enjoyed the show. Until next time, keep shooting the Que.